welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. Our guest is Mike Bogan, president and co-owner of Landcare. Mike runs a company that has 3,800 employees, 70 locations, 285 million in revenue. It's a 24-year-old company, 8 years under his leadership. And this is such a great podcast because you're going to hear from someone who's been through the industry and all the great companies in some of the peak moments. He worked at Brickman and helped create the branch system, helped them shift from residential design build to commercial maintenance. He worked there for 23 years. He retired while he took a break for a couple of years and then got recruited by Landcare, the people who owned it, to turn it around. And he convinced some old people from Brickman and other friends to join with him simultaneously. This team was like just a magic team that went in and fought hard together to turn around Landcare. And he rebranded the company, he turned it around, and then the team bought the company and took it private. And now branch managers on up own this company. It's a great story. And you look at Landcare as a company in progress, as a company that's sort of arrived and is polished. But when you hear Mike talk, you're going to hear the enthusiasm of somebody running an 8-year-old company. And this is a great podcast. Many people ask me, hey, do you only work with large companies like Landcare? And really, in my peer groups and in my consulting, I work with 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20, not just the $50 million companies. Really, my sweet spot is helping these smaller size companies grow up to the larger level. And for some of you who come onto my podcast through the internet and have never been on my newsletter list, if you go to jeffreyscott.biz, you will see a button to sign up there for my newsletter. You can scroll all the way to the bottom of the homepage, or just at the top, there's a button. And so this is not just a podcast. It's really a journey that I am really trying to take everyone on here in the green industry to improve yourself and live the life of your dreams and grow a company, just like Mike Bogan has done here. This is an incredible story. You're going to love this podcast. Here we go. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Jeffrey. It's a treat to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
This is excellent. So, Mike, tell us about Landcare today. Describe the present tense.
Sure. So I'm the CEO of Landcare. Landcare is a commercial management company, meaning we serve primarily commercial properties, and we operate in 26 states across the country, 72 offices or branches across the country, and we do about $280 million in annual revenue today.
And you have 3,800 employees?
Yeah, that's correct. We have just shy of 4,000 when we are fully staffed in the summertime.
So from an employee perspective, is that the second largest, third largest? Where is it?
Oh, I don't know. I think on lawn and landscapes list, we come in around number 10. Some of those have probably more revenue that's not as people as intensive. So maybe a little bit higher than that. But yeah, I'd guess somewhere in the top 15.
Yeah, for sure. So Landcare and you both have a really interesting story, and yours is, and I want to get to yours, but tell us briefly about Landcare's story. Listeners, some will know its story, but probably not in all the detail. So, take 2 minutes and give us the Landcare short edition.
Yeah, I think if you've been around our industry Well, certainly, if you've been around as long as I have, you've watched the True Green Landcare story, and I'll use the name of True Green Landcare as kind of the early days. But if I go back to how the business started, two companies started doing two slightly different things to build national footprints. So this is the late 90s, into 97, early 1998. And at the time, there were two companies that you could more or less call national landscape companies. One was the Brickman group, which was a family business, and the other was Valley Crest, the Sperber family's company. And both went coast to coast, but in kind of complementary footprints. Brickman was big in the Midwest and the Northeast and down the Eastern Seaboard, and Valley Crest was more West Coast and then coming across the South and overlapped in a few markets. But so there was a venture capitalist-backed group called Landcare that sought to create a national footprint by doing a corporate roll-up. So that's a business created by buying many, many, many different companies and putting them under one umbrella to call it one organization. And they had done that successfully in a couple of other industries, notably the heating and air industry, where they bought local businesses and created a national business out of them. So they saw an opportunity in the landscape space, which was and still is really highly fragmented, meaning there's just many, many different independent operators, and they got a core group of initial landscape company owners to jump in. I think there were 6 original companies that formed Landcare, and then they started acquiring. And I think by the time they stopped, it was just shy of 80 companies in total that they had purchased. So all different sizes. They were really agnostic as to the kind of space that they were going to be in. So if it had landscape in the title, it was fair game, which meant they had commercial companies, residential companies, garden centers, nursery and distribution centers, tree care, construction, everything that you can imagine was part of the Landcare roll-up. Landcare USA was the original name. Within a few, it was a lot, and it was done very quickly. With under 2 years, all those acquisitions were made, and at the same time, starting just a couple of months after them, True Green decided to get into the landscape business. So they had been successful doing a buy and build strategy, or an acquisition strategy to build what was then called True Green ChemLawn, which was the merger of those two businesses, but operating as one of the Service Master family businesses, or family of companies. True Green ChemLawn decided to get into landscaping and started to acquire landscape companies as well. They were a little more selective. They focused on the large regional players and some of the premier brands in the space. And they had put 8 or 9 companies together by late 1999 as well. So they were on their way to building out a national footprint in the landscape space. They both different roll-ups tried to acquire the 2 bigger companies, Valley Crest and Brickman, but neither were interested in selling their businesses at the time, and both had their own strategies to continue growing and remain independent of these 2 roll-ups. So late 99, True Green ChemLawn decided to buy Landcare USA. So they purchased the bigger company and made it part of their one organization. So that's when True Green Landcare was formed. So end of 99, early 2000. And they were, I don't know the exact numbers, but between 800 million and $1 billion in revenue, which was huge, way bigger than either Valley Crest or Brickman at the time. So they had, suddenly become the number one player in the space by far. And at the time, there really weren't any other private equity backed roll-ups. So this was 2000. Private equity had a part of Valleycrest. Private equity had a part of Brickman. And now this venture capitalist group had sold to a public company. So True Green Landcare was public and appeared to be still on its strategy of continuing to do acquisitions. But they hit their first headwinds right after the acquisition. Some of the leaders decided to exit the business because they didn't like the way the direction of the company was going. People followed those leaders out of the company. So from 2000 to 2005 was a time of a lot of departures of key talent out of the organization, a lot of revenue decline as some of those partners let their non-competes expire and went back into business and started to rebuild companies, both by hiring their old team members and then going after their old customers. And True Green Landcare saw its revenue decline significantly over the next 10 years. So from 2000 to 2010, that business lost revenue and shrank down to about $200 million in revenue by the end of that 10-year period. So about 75% of its revenue was either they divested of some of those businesses, or they closed them, or they just lost revenue and got smaller. And as you can imagine, a lot of the talent left too. And for those of us that were in the industry in the 2000s, we didn't give the True Green Landcare brand a lot of consideration. It was not a frightening competitor to deal with. From time to time, a little irrational in its pricing, but not a place that would recruit top talent or really compete for the best work. So it was just out there and something that we were all aware of. In 2000, True Green decided to get out of the landscape business and focus on the lawn care business. So they separated True Green Landcare from their business, put it on auction and tried to sell it by running a process. And at the end of the day, weren't getting many takers. So none of the large landscape companies thought that they could acquire it. And I looked at it as my role with one of those other large companies at the time, and just decided it wasn't a deal that would work for us. So they ended up selling it to a private equity group that specialized in turnarounds. So what they call a resurgence group. And their idea was to buy distressed assets, see if they could turn them around and then sell them for a profit. So that was in 2011. And that gets us up to the business kind of breaking off of True Green and being a standalone company. They, as a private equity owned business, the belief was that they'd turn it around and start doing acquisitions again and starting to build from that process. But for the next 3 years, they really struggled to figure out how to turn the business. They were not able to get the business cash flow positive, so they were continuing to sink money in as they operated it, and really never fell on a strategy to get the business either growing or making a profit or having viability going forward. So in 2014, I was not working at the time. They reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you consult with us and give us some ideas on what we might do to fix this business?" And that led to me sharing a number of ideas with their current leadership team. They didn't really want to follow that strategy. And at that point, the private equity team that owned the business, Aurora Resurgence, asked me to come in and take a leadership role and run the business. So that was fall of 2014.
So okay, so now you enter the picture, but let's go back in time a little bit and give our audience where did you come from? Give us a little history, and then we'll come back to the present or come back to that point.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you as much history as you want, and I'll let you edit out what's too much. But I got interested in this business when I was in high school. I worked at a garden center that had a landscape division, and it was just a an after school job and summer job, but I really liked it. It really struck a chord with me. I loved the way we could go do work at someone's home, and by the time we finished our project, completely changed the way they feel or felt about their space, their outdoor spaces. And that was really empowering to me. And I decided I wanted to do that for a living. So I went to Mississippi State University. I got my degree in landscape architecture. By the time I graduated, I was aware that I wasn't the most talented landscape architect to come out of the program. But I loved what I'd learned, and I loved the industry. I found my first job at what was then called ALCA Student Career Days or Student Field Days, and now is NCLC, or the National Collegiate Landscape Competition, which is sponsored by NALP, and was really turned on about what the industry had to offer by attending those events. Found my first job there for when I graduated. Ended up going to work in Washington, D.C. for a regional company. Had become aware of Brickman during that interview process, and had some friends from school that had gone to work for that company. And 2 years later, met Scott Brickman. We became friends, and he ended up recruiting me to come work for the business there in the Washington, D.C. market. So that was graduated from school in 1987 and started my career there in 1989. I started as a what was then called a project director, which was part business development and part project management. So our strategy was we would pursue and secure opportunities to do work or sell new business, and then we would manage those projects. So that was my role. It was, at the time, Brickman was a design build firm that kind of dabbled in maintenance.
Hard to believe, right?
Yeah, and it changed rapidly from the time I was there. The economy hit a nosedive. There wasn't enough new construction work to keep our team members busy, and we decided to park people in maintenance for a little bit until the economy turned around and construction came back again. So I was one of those asked to, hey, go. Let's get you involved in the maintenance business. You can sell work there and then manage those projects. And frankly, I wasn't very excited about it. It didn't seem as sexy or interesting to me as design and construction did. But I fell in love with it almost immediately, and our business fell in love with it too. Brickman realized that the recurring revenue model, the stability in the business, and the ability to grow and replicate our footprint through our branch model was going to be very, very effective. So I was one of the first branch managers there as we pioneered that model, and that worked out really well for Brickman. We learned that we could grow and expand through that model, and that took me after several years of working in the Washington, D.C. area to Florida. I spent 5 years living in West Palm Beach and growing our business there. And then in 2002, relocated to San Diego, California, and where I live today, even though there was a little stint of moving away again. But where I ran the West Coast for the company, and a few years later joined the executive team and spent my last 7 years there as executive vice president and running the business as part of our executive team. So
what is an executive vice president? It sounds high level.
Well, for us, I guess it could be different things at different organizations. We weren't filled with C-suite titles. So we had a chief executive officer who was Scott Brickman, who also served as president of the company. Jeff Harold was our COO. Mark Yelly was our general counsel, and I was the EVP. And so the four of us really day to day, created the strategy and ran that business. So those were our roles, and the three of us, Mark and Jeff and I, each had different corporate functions that rolled up to us. So I worked with the national sales team and the marketing team and the employee development teams, and Mark ran finance and legal, and Jeff ran purchasing, and But we all also had operational areas of the business that we were responsible for. So meaning I had the divisional vice presidents that managed the West Coast and central part of the country reporting up through me.
So you worked there 23 years, long time in anybody's, calculation.
Yeah.
And you took a break for a couple of years. What was there a reason to leave? You got burnt out?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to take over Scott's responsibilities as he was looking to change his role, but that just wasn't timely for me. I was living on the West Coast. I had made several moves with my family throughout my career. My kids were in high school, and it just wasn't time to move again. And it really wasn't feasible to think about running the business from the West Coast when HQ was in Maryland on the East Coast. So we hired an outside CEO, and I knew immediately that I wasn't going to be able to be the kind of partner I had been with Scott. We just Scott and I had a very strong personal relationship. I told you he had hired me 23 years earlier. We've been close all through that time. I enjoyed having the right amount of access and influence to the leadership team. And with a new CEO coming in from outside, I knew it would be very challenging to develop that same kind of relationship from across the country. But I also learned very quickly that we just didn't click. We just didn't see things eye to eye. And I decided to kind of wrap my career up in a positive way, and my time at Brickman. And I left there in the summer of 2012.
And the snowboard was calling you, huh?
Well, at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I had spent a lot of time traveling, a lot of time focused on business. And I thought, a break's going to be nice. I'll focus on spending time with my family, with my parents, and doing some snowboarding and spending some time in nature. And I knew that I wasn't retiring. I was 48. So I was fortunate in that I had options in front of me to do whatever really made the most sense and would be the most fulfilling. But mostly I just wanted a break. And I promised myself for a year I wasn't even going to think about a job or anything else. I was just going to enjoy myself. And that lasted about 6 months. And I started thinking about work again. I missed the industry a ton and missed the people in it. And after looking and kind of exploring doing things outside the industry, I realized that this is the business that I really enjoy.
It really is so deep. On the outside, it looks so, I don't know, superficial or simple to the casual observer. And it's amazing how deep our industry is. So, all right. So let's go back to Landcare. So they took a break. They brought you in. They said, hey, you know what? You're our guy. And it was losing money. It was still a mess. What were your first moves when you took on the helm?
Yeah, 2014 was a really interesting year. So I'll go back to what was going on at Brickman in that time frame. So as I told you, 2012, new CEO comes in, different personality, different vision on where he wanted to take the business. And he was moving fast and charging hard. And there were some casualties left from that. There were some people that didn't really feel aligned with the direction the business was going. But then add in the private equity group that had the controlling stake in the company, sold it. So Leonard Green exited and KKR came in. So they had new private equity owners. Those private equity owners quickly bought Valley Crest. So they put the two companies together. So now you had two CEOs and two companies merging under one umbrella. And if you know much about those companies, they were both extraordinary organizations, very, very successful, fast growing organically, and great companies where people had great careers. But they were very different. Their cultures were not that similar. Other than the fact that they both, were in multiple states and did the same kind of work, they were run very differently and had different cultures. So that merger was a challenge. I think it'd be like if you pick any two top brands, they've been competing against each other for a long time. So when suddenly they find themselves on the same team, it's hard to think of themselves as partners. So that merger was struggling a little bit. They went the next step and went public. So take these series of changes, right? You've got a new CEO at Brickman. You've got a new private equity ownership group. You've got a merger with their biggest competitor, and then you've got a pathway to going public. So what had been a great place to work and grow up in the industry for me that I had experienced so positively. And I had many, many great things that happened to me there, Jeffrey. I really learned so much about people and interpersonal relationships and what makes a business work the right way. And those lessons really helped me be not just a strong professional, but I felt like they helped me be a better father and a better husband and a better community member and just a better person. And I was really grateful for that, for those experiences. And when I watched what was going on, this is 2014 at that company, I realized, that's not a place where those things all exist anymore. It's very, very different. So as I was being offered the opportunity to take over the helm at True Green Landcare, the first thing I did was reach out to friends that I had and that were still at what was then becoming Brightview or had recently left and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm going to need a lot of help. Would you be willing to do it with me? Would you be interested? And many, many hands went up and said, yes, I like you miss what we used to have. And if we could get the band back together and create something special again, I'd love to be part of it. And that was really key because there's no way I could have done it by myself. And there wasn't enough talent. There were some great people at True Green Landcare, but there wasn't enough talent to fix the problems we had without bringing in some help.
Right. So that was your first move.
So that was the first move. But even before I took the job, I said, if I do it, will you do it? I got a lot of nods and handshakes. And and then in November, I started in my role as CEO and started building that team and putting people together to turn the business around.
So it took you 2 years to turn it around, or 2 or 3 years. What were the underlying causes of losing money that you changed?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there was a number of them. And depends on how you measure turnaround because we stopped losing money in just a little over a year. We were still investing a lot, but just on operational basis, we stopped losing money. But we still hadn't really become the company that we wanted to be. And I don't know that I could say we're really the company we want to be today. It's still a journey. And while I think we enjoy relevance in the industry, people look at us and acknowledge what we're doing. I still think that there's more to accomplish and more that we want to do. But your question was like, what did I focus on? What were the first things that we did and how did we do it? Really, from the very beginning, we tried to create a different vision for our team members. When I got here, there was no set of core values. There was no identifiable purpose. When I asked the questions of both our leaders and our team members, why do you come to work every day? I kind of got shrugs and answers like, well, it's a paycheck. And I said, well, I would ask, well, why do you think Landcare is even in business? What's our purpose? And the best they could come up with as an answer was to make money. And when I pushed on, okay, well, who are we making money for? They said, well, I guess the investors, the owners. And well, how compelling is it to get out of work and make money for somebody you've never met or don't know and probably already has a lot of money? Is that really what we, why we want to do this? And so it was clear to me that we lacked a compelling vision for our team members and a reason of why we were doing what we were doing. And there were a lot of problems in the business. The effort to get to break even or cash flow positive was really focused on cost cutting, and that affected the business in a lot of ways. So they weren't replacing old equipment. In some cases, they weren't repairing damaged equipment. They weren't buying new uniforms. They weren't upgrading or keeping up with technology in any way. So it was, we'll cut our way to profitability was not working. The brand degradation had accelerated. The trucks were embarrassingly poorly kept up, and in some cases not even safe. And the same can be said about the equipment and facilities. And so it was a real opportunity to tell our team members, look, we want to do things differently. We want to do things in a way that you can really be proud of the work that you're doing. We want to give you the tools that you need to do your work well. And we want to start telling you, don't leave a job site until you're proud of the work that you've done. This isn't about trying to work as fast as you can. It's about trying to do work that matters, that you can be proud of. So it's a lot in all of that messaging, but those were our early areas of focus. And to get our team members to believe that we really meant it wasn't easy. I was I think, 9th CEO of that business in a 15-year span. So there'd not been a lot of, not a lot of consistency. Things had changed rapidly through the years. And at first, I don't think anybody thought I was anything more than the new leader du jour and, gonna be somebody else in the days ahead.
Were you on a short leash or any kind of leash from the owners? Like, did they give you a timeline?
No, in fact, they knew up front, based on the strategy that we'd set forth, that they were going to have to put more money into the business. So even though we had significant operating losses that had accumulated, we needed even more because I needed to invest in the infrastructure in the company and fund a rebrand. And those things were critical to us. So they knew it was going to take some time. I put together a strategy and a 5-year plan that I thought we could achieve. It was so far above and beyond what they thought was possible in the business that they said, great, if you can get us to there, that'll be wonderful. And frankly, we beat every year in that plan from the first year. So I think that early success and effectiveness in making the changes really bought us all the time and understanding that we needed, from the owners. At that point, they were just happy that the business was going forward and changing for the better rapidly.
So who owned the business then? And did they own other things, or were you their big egg?
No, it was a private equity group. Again, the name of the group was Aurora Resurgence. In their fund, they had 7 or 8 portfolio companies. So all different, nobody else in the landscape business, maybe one other service company, but everything from companies that make cookware to companies that ship oil to other businesses completely unrelated. The similarity was that they all had been in some form of stress, so they were all at some level turnaround businesses. So this was private equity owned 100% of the stock. I was allowed to invest or buy into the company when I started, as were the senior leaders that I recruited. So together, we bought a small stake in the business, and that turned out to be really helpful for us years down the road. But that will take us. So that was 2014, 2015. We rebranded the company in late 2015 to just Landcare, new colors, new brand, new logos, and really back that with a big investment in everything external. So our trucks, our uniforms, our website, the things that people see. But we had been changing long before that internally, and that had been the real focus. Let's change the way we conduct ourselves, the way we do business, the way we treat each other, and the way we treat our customers and our vendors. And when we have implemented that change, then we'll change externally and kind of tell the whole world we're something different, and we'll be able to back it up.
So I'm just in my mind thinking about how you did this. And so it wasn't just you coming into the company, but you brought the old band with you. And so you were already all of like minds, kind of like the Borg in Star Trek or whatever that is, right? Everybody connected, or different people, but all interconnected.
Yeah, it was really helpful. How many people? I'm sorry.
How many people was this web of leaders that you brought?
Yeah, originally there was 10, but that grew and grew and grew and grew. So once we got that first 10, and we started to change the business, and people could see something positive, then people started seeking us out as a place to work. So we didn't have to recruit. In the early days, I really had to pitch it. People knew who the business was, and there was not a lot of luster on the brand, and it wasn't a place that they would have wanted to come work. So I really counted on, getting the first two to say, I want to be part of this too. And I'm with you, Mike. And then the three of us going, hey, don't you want to be part of us? Look who we've already got. We've got some momentum. And as that grew, we used that to bring more and more talent over. And I don't have a list of the numbers that we've brought in from the old days together, but it's pretty significant.
Well, okay. Gotcha. But so there was 10 leaders. So really you guys fanned out, or guys and gals, fanned out all of like minds. Because I was thinking, how could you turn around a multi-branch company all by yourself? And you can't.
No, I can't. And this is not the Mike Bogan story by any means. It's the story of our leadership team and what we were able to accomplish together. And it took that, as you pointed out, at the time we were 40 branches. And every branch had to be fixed. It wasn't just one tweak at the top or readjustment or alignment consideration. It was really each business had to have their portfolio examined, figure out why we weren't performing well. Was it bad estimates or bad performance? And then get the right people in the branch where we needed to make changes. Start to do training so that everybody understood how to do things the right way, and start to serve our customers in a way that we can actually have their respect and earn referrals from them and be able to grow our business.
The way you described, I think it was True Green Landcare. There's a lot going on in the story, but the way you described how they initially bought up everybody, like a big mess, got to be. So how much business did you have to go and prune off right away?
Yeah, not a lot. As I mentioned, we were about 200 million. As they came in, Aurora was selling a nursery that they owned. So that brought revenue down a little bit. We identified several markets that we were operating in that just weren't effective for us. Again, we had to fix every one of them. And there were places that our view of the long term just didn't offer enough opportunity to continue fighting there. So we closed branches or sold branches in many outlying areas that weren't kind of core to our business. We left Birmingham and Knoxville and Jacksonville and Tampa. And earlier, before I got here, I had left Boston and Minneapolis, and we closed in Albany, Oregon. So these were cities that we just didn't feel like, man, we can't win everywhere. We got to win somewhere, and let's narrow our focus down and try to put our energy into fixing businesses in the core markets that are really going to be part of our long-term strategy. We also exited some product lines. So we had tree care businesses sprinkled throughout the organization, and they weren't being run properly. And so rather than try to fix that too, we just exited that line of business. We had a third-party subcontracting line of business where, if you asked us to do work in Fargo, North Dakota, we'd say sure, and then we'd find a subcontractor to do it. but it wasn't functioning very cleanly. And so we exited that out of that business line. And there were a few others that were smaller, but just didn't really make sense as we were trying to build the business and needed to get good at a couple of things instead of many, many things at once.
One of the reasons I was excited to have you on the podcast, many reasons, but you have a very unique approach. You're not out there doing multiple acquisitions. You're not looking to scale up and sell. And so that makes you unique. And in fact, that you actually bought the business and took it private in 2019, which is in itself a great story. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'll give you the high level on that. So, as private equity does, they buy portfolio companies with the plan to grow them, create more value in them than the day they purchased them, and sell them again. And in many cases, their investors don't get returns until those businesses are sold. They might do dividends along the way, but more often than not, they buy the company, they sell the company. When they sell the company, they distribute the proceeds to their investment group. So Aurora had owned the business since they closed on it in early 2011. It'd been 3 years later before I came on board. A couple of years after that, we started to get to cash flow neutral and then cash flow positive. But that was 5 years in. And for private equity, that's kind of the hold that they envision when they buy a company. And now the company had some promise. And as part of their portfolio, they started to see, hey, we may be able to sell this for a profit, when previously I think they would have been happy to just get out of the business and cut their losses. So within a couple of years, we started to grow our EBITDA, which is a cash flow measure I'm sure you're familiar with. And that really signaled to me that the time was going to come when they were going to look to monetize this investment. And they need powerful, successful exits of companies to raise funds in the future. So when they go out to their raise their next round of funding to buy their next round of companies, they need to be able to show exits that were positive for them. So I knew that they were starting to think about that with Landcare, and I didn't want to be on that carousel. I don't believe that a company such as ours should be thought of as an asset, as a financial asset. I thought we're a collection of people and livelihoods and careers, and we need to be able to have that constancy of purpose so that we can deliver that for people over the long term. And remember, I had this experience of working for one company for 23 years. And my entire time there, Jeffrey, I never thought it would change. I thought it would be the company that I joined and grew up in. And I imagined retiring from there, sometime when I was old and in everybody's way. And then it changed on a dime. Leadership changed, ownership changed, and it became something very, very different. And I didn't want to be part of that again. I didn't want to build something that would go through that same exercise just so a few people at the very top could become very, very wealthy or much wealthier than they already were. It just felt like it wasn't wired to the way I wanted to see our business function and what its place in society should be. So I knew that we were either going to be on that private equity carousel or we were going to be sold to a large strategic company, meaning one of the other big companies in the space, or we were going to have to gain control of the business ourselves. And I was fortunate to be able to convince my management team to roll its equity forward. We found lenders that that believed in us and believed in our story, and agreed to lend us a significant amount of money. And then we brought in some outside investors, what we call our friends and family group, to make up the rest of the capital we needed to buy the company and become its owners. And of course, one of the pieces of that story is Scott Brickman, who is like both a friend and a family member to me, because we've had such a great relationship over the past 30 years. He tracked our story and was really keenly interested in what we were doing, and and loved being able to be part of that friend and family group. So he joined our investors and became part of that buyout group.
And so what percentage of ownership did the leadership team retain?
Yeah, so our management team and the leaders that work in the company every day are north of 50% ownership. Our friends and family group is a variety of different people, but closer to 45%. And as they exit their position, we buy those shares back into the company itself, which creates larger ownership for our management team. So that's our long-term vision that ultimately all of those shares will be held inside the company. The neat thing about it is today we have full control and the ability to decide what our future looks like. And it makes me feel really good to tell our team members when you go to bed tonight, when you wake up, we're still going to be Landcare. Our trucks are still going to be Tangerine, and nothing's going to change that. That permanence and that vision is something that is hard for other companies, especially in today's environment, to be able to tell its team members.
Have you thought about ESOP and giving shares, selling shares to the employees?
Yeah, I have. I think that we're close to that now with how broadly ownership runs down into our business. So if you're a branch manager at our company, you're an owner. You get granted shares as part of your compensation, but you get granted shares and they vest over time and you become part of that ownership team. So today, I think we have 120-ish employees that own part of the business. All again in senior roles in the organization. I have not considered hard going to a full ESOP. It changes a lot about the way the business runs and about how evaluations are done. And frankly, my experience has been it isn't valued highly enough by the team members that are impacted that aren't in a really senior position. So It's not something that we've considered beyond just that.
So if I'm a branch manager, do I get an annual dividend from my shares?
You could. I mean, today our profits are paying down the debt that we used to buy the business. So we have done one significant dividend to our ownership group. We'll do them again in the future, but we've got some leverage on our company today, which was part of being able to keep our ownership group so small. And our control of the business so significant. So we'll try to make that go away first and bring our leverage down. And then ultimately, I think annual dividends will be part of what our owners enjoy.
That explains to me something you said early on, which is, you feel like you're at the beginning of your vision. And now I can see why you're saying that, because you are in the middle of your vision, because you really are. Yeah. You're still in the middle of this.
Yeah, we're still building, and a business doing our revenue shouldn't be coast to coast. We shouldn't be up and down one seaboard and across the whole country. Meaning we're not that big in each marketplace. At one time, as I told you, that the revenue was really significant, but as the business lost revenue and became much smaller, it left True Green Landcare with tiny footprints in each marketplace. So we're building off of that, which gives us a lot of upside. We don't have a commanding amount of market share in many places. So the upside, the growth potential, organic growth potential is really significant. And frankly, we need it. It's hard to be profitable when you're doing as much revenue as we're doing, spread so significantly across the country. It's really thin, and as we grow, it makes us much stronger financially, and also and improves our branding.
So I'll be driving to Tampa for Thanksgiving to see my son. Will I find Landcare back in Tampa?
You will see Landcare in Tampa today, sure, and probably across a lot of Florida.
Yeah, as I drive there, good. What is there an ideal branch size? And I'm asking from a couple reasons
Sure.
or thoughts. One is, well, it's really, is there an ideal branch size? And then as you grow in a market, does your ideal branch size change, or do you just set up multiple branches?
Yeah, both. We'll set up multiple branches, and that branch size will change. As I like to think about it, the ideal branch size is such that the branch manager knows all of their team members and knows almost all of their customers, if not all of their customers. So,
okay.
For us, that tends to be around $5 million. So at the $5 million mark, the branch manager can still, spend a morning startup out there with the teams, can get around to the jobs during the day. There's going to always be things that tie you to a desk in our business. We try to limit those. We know branch managers are more powerful if they're out leading their team members and spending time with their team members and time with their clients. So that's where we want them. If the branch gets too hard, it's really hard to get out from behind that desk. And then what we find is branch managers start to rely on lieutenants, for lack of a better term, to go out and do those things. And they become more distant and less in touch with the front line of the business and with their clients. So 5 million tends to work. Now, if the density is really significant, if the business is really tight, we've got branches that'll do maybe $6 or $7 million in a very tight radius and through larger customer relationships. And so we'll let the branches get bigger in those types of situations. But generally, when they get to 6 or 7, we'll split them. We'll give somebody else a chance to lead a branch, and we'll run 2 smaller business units that will grow faster than one would.
So I'm thinking, if you knew every branch manager and they knew every client and employee, you're just like one step removed from everybody.
That's pretty accurate? Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I certainly know all of our branch managers. We get together a couple times a year in person, and we do things virtually throughout the year as well. But certainly have a personal relationship with just about every single one of them, and that's important to me. Our business should feel intimate. The team members, everyone in the company is given my cell phone number. They are encouraged to text or call at any time about anything that's they're curious about. And we try to make our business feel small and intimate as much as we possibly can.
Is your goal to always know every branch manager, or will you have to sort of give up that at some point?
No, I don't think so. I haven't been challenged to keep those relationships in place. And I mean, knowing and spending time and being able to to recite the names of their spouse and children is probably a little bit deeper than I am today. But that comes with growth and having new people added into the business constantly. But it's important to me that everybody feels comfortable from top to bottom in the organization, and that we're not viewed as having some ivory tower with people that sit at the top and have no idea what's happening down on the ground. So I'm traveling every week. I'm out in the business, trying to spend time with our teams and our people, and make sure that I stay in really close touch with what it feels like out in the business doing what we do every day.
So every week you're visiting clients and employees, and then weekends you're back home?
Yeah, pretty much. I would say I spend less time with clients and more time with our teams, but trying to be out in the business, visiting local branches, and usually as the nature of such things, I end up spending more time in the places where we've got challenges or problems, and trying to bring some ideas to bear on how we can improve those situations. But I probably travel for business 5 weeks out of 6.
Yeah. I'm sort of wondering, like, if I was in your shoes, how I would be managing your business. Do you have like a tight executive team and then a little bit larger leadership team, or how is that?
Sure. Yeah, so our branch managers report to vice presidents, and most of them have the title market vice president. So they'd be in charge of a market. Sometimes that's a couple of markets, but usually it's just one. And they report to divisional vice presidents. And we have four of those in our business today. And those four divisional vice presidents serve on our executive team that makes all the decisions that we run the company with. So four DVPs, my CFO, and our director of organizational development.
Nice. I noticed there's not a lawyer on your executive team.
No, we do have a general counsel, and I count on him a lot for helping in the business. But you mentioned earlier that we're more focused on organic growth, and that's truly the case. If this was a buy and build platform, and I was looking to exit in the next 3 to 5 years and create as much value as I could for investors, then we would be buying and buying and buying, like many of our competitors are. That's just not our strategy. We're not looking to ever sell this business. We're looking to create something that's relevant and that is meaningful for our team members. That is a great place to work where, I said earlier what I thought about my time at Brickman, that I was able to grow to be a better person. And we want to create that kind of environment here for our people. So we've got long-term vision and are really focused on, not the next 2 or 3 years, but the next 20. And we'll do acquisitions. We've done a few since I've been here. What happens is they're friends of mine from across the industry that I've known for years that have looked around at what's going on, either by selling to public company or selling to other private equity owned businesses, and said, I don't think that's what I want for my teams. Can we talk about what you guys might have to offer? And some of those lead to understanding that we share a lot of values and see the world the same way, and those will lead to acquisitions for us. But otherwise, we're growing organically in the low teens and are excited about that. It's been accelerating every year. So I don't know how far we'll take that, but
accelerating every year. So the speed of growth has been increasing.
The speed of growth has been increasing, but remember where we started. We had a very tarnished brand that was not growing at all, and so we actually got smaller when we started the turnaround, and then started to grow. But from low single digits to high single digits to low double digits to mid-teens, and we're, as the brand builds, as familiarity builds, as we become bigger in each marketplace, so far that growth has accelerated every year.
It's interesting. I've learned a lot in this conversation. When I look at your brand, which I know you're proud of and you've done a great job, it looks like such a polished, finished product. And then as we hear you speak here, you're just in the middle of building this. And so interesting to kind of have both views.
Yeah, I've been here 8 years. The rebrand started close to the end of my first year. So, in some ways it feels like a 7-year-old company. I mean, we recognize, so True Green Landcare recognized the tenure of the companies, the team members at the companies that they acquired. And we recognize that tenure. So I'll have people, recognizing their 45-year anniversary or retiring after 40 something years. And in that way, it obviously feels like we've been around a really, really long time. But in this new journey, we're 7 to 8 years deep, which still feels kind of early. Certainly proud of what we've done and what this team has accomplished, but feel like we've got so much more to do ahead of us.
So some people say to me, they think I only work with big companies because I interview a lot of big companies, but clearly I work with companies that are 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, not just the super large companies. Tell the audience what you learned back when you were smaller that you're still doing today kind of advice to somebody who's listening who is smaller. Hey, start doing or keep doing X because it's going to help you to keep growing.
Yeah, I was really lucky right out of college to go to work for a couple of mentors that taught me a ton about being a constant learner. So they were always reading. Every minute that could be soaking up new information was spent that way. So what we're doing now as a podcast, back then were tapes that we would cassette tapes, but we would listen to books on tape. There was no streaming, but we'd listen to books on tape and we'd pass them around and we'd read books and share them. And that has stuck with me forever. Just be a constant learner. Be really curious about what else is out there, not just in our space, but in other spaces too, where you can find inspiration. And share that with your team. Make learning a part of what you take your teams through, no matter what the size of your business is. I did it in my first branch when we were under $1 million in revenue, but I would sit around with my team every week and we would talk about something that we were reading or taking inspiration from and how it could affect our business. So number one thing is to decide you're going to be a learner and stay focused on it and take the different opportunities that are out there. I like to exercise. I go for runs. I love listening to podcasts while I'm on the run or on a road trip. And it's just a great time to bring inspiration and new information into your brain.
Okay, I like that. What else would you advise someone that you did early or you wish you had done early that you're doing now?
I would absolutely tell you, surround yourself with like-minded people. Find partners that are going to push you. I've never been one to enjoy kind of feeling like I stood alone or sat alone at the helm of the company. I've always had a circle of people that I rely on heavily. And I think, build your team. You don't have to do it yourself. You're going to be better if someone checks your ideas and checks your thoughts. And if you have to say them out loud to a team to get somebody else's thoughts. If I was running a $2 or $5 million company, I would say, have your advisors, maybe an outside board of directors. It may just be a couple of people that you rely on. I do it today for some of my friends in the industry that run small businesses that will just pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, or I'm thinking about that, or I've run into this problem with this employee or this customer. What would you do? And I'm really happy to share my insights with my friends. And so I would tell you, find somebody that you can rely on that for. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. There's a lot of great resources out there, especially in our industry where people are so open to sharing.
You're really describing the peer group network that I run as part of my business. We have 130 members in that group, and we're always studying books, learning from each other, challenged, have to say our ideas out loud, reports to the board. So it's very
similar to that. I think in some ways we have that internally, with 70 branch managers, there's 70 peers inside the company that work in our same system, face the same challenges, but find different ways to work their way through them. And it's the same at the vice president level. The market vice presidents, we have 16 across the company. They have peers within the organization that they can share with. Many of them have peers outside our friends outside the organization in the same industry too. But even just inside our company, there's a lot of shared learning. And I think peer groups are awesome. I've never been in one personally, but I have many friends that have, and I've had those same experiences and benefits by working at a large company where I have people that kind of do the same thing inside the organization.
Well, you and I have something in common. We have both built a peer group network. You've got yours, and
I like the sound of that, and certainly can appreciate it and know that it's fulfilling in many different ways. Just creating relationships and friendships. The number one thing I've gotten out of NALP over the years is the ability to meet so many great professionals that are so open to sharing, and it's been really rewarding.
That's it. The alchemy magic.
Mhm.
Hey, I know we're running tight on time here. So one last question for you, Mike. Thanks, by the way, so much for spending your time here. This has been great. Give us a prediction for the future, or one or a couple, whatever you've got in your pocket there. What are your predictions for our industry for the future?
Yeah, I think we're going to be changing a lot in the next few years. Autonomous vehicles, autonomous machines, electrification are impacting us pretty quickly. In areas of the world where you see water restrictions, they're forcing our landscapes to change. So if you're in the Southwest or the West, you see less turf on sites than you used to see, and that's not going to go away. So those are some of the things that we're probably all aware of and see as we watch what happens in this space. I've heard people question whether or not there will be room for the mid-size or small or even larger regional competitor, because there's so much activity with larger companies being created and gaining larger footprints. And there always will be. I believe our best competitors in every market that we serve are the small, independently owned businesses. They have the passion of an owner behind them, and they have a real strong, compelling story. And I think that over and over again, they're the toughest companies that we compete with. So what I would tell you, that's something I'd predict to remain in our industry and not change. You're going to see more and more of what you've seen the last 10 years, which is the presence of private equity. It's not just in landscaping, it's in every industry out there. And you'll see institutional groups or organized investors buying privately held companies. That's going to continue. I don't think it's for the better for our industry, but it's not going away. And I think that makes it even a better, stronger place to be if you're an owner operator.
Yeah, you have changed my view of Landcare. Spending time with you here, you're really a really large family business, or owner operated business.
Yeah, I think that's one way to think about it. The people here run and think about the company much that way, and not as if I'm just turned 58. People ask me all the time, Jeffrey, how much longer are you going to do this? I'm having more fun than I've ever had. I'll do it for a lot longer. Hopefully, the right time to step away is when I'm in the way of another leader who would come in here and is ready for the chance and probably will do a better job than I have running the organization. So, but when that day happens, I don't think about needing to sell my position in the company or wanting to sell my position in the company. I think that owning a big piece of a business is a great place to have some of your personal net worth, and we'll look to continue that and pass it on to my family as opposed to or sell it back to the organization, but not ever thinking about having to monetize that to call it a successful run.
So you don't have buy sales where you have to sell it back if you pass, or?
No, if our team members exit the company, we have the right for our employees to call those shares. So if we want to, we can have them sell those shares to us and we can purchase those, but it's at our option.
Yep. Okay. Mike, this has been tremendous. I really appreciate your time. It's given me great insight, both like the history of the whole industry and in what you've created there and you're in the middle of creating. And thank you so much for sharing all that wonderful information.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. It's a story that I'm proud of what the team here has accomplished, and we're pretty humble. We know we have a long way to go and a lot more to do, but we're really motivated to go out there and get it done and excited about the future. Thanks, awesome. Jeffrey. I'm flattered that you asked me to be here, and ask anytime. I'm always happy to share what Landcare is doing.
Thank you.